Here are some of the most common mistakes to watch for as a SOC analyst. I'm Brandon and I work as a SOC analyst with about 9 months of experience. So the first mistake is an over-reliance on tools. One thing SOC analysts commonly do is put too much trust in automation or SIEM tools without understanding the context of the actual detection or alert. Say when an alert is triggered and it comes in the queue, a SOC analyst should, rather than just picking up the alert, understand what the alert actually means, its context, and how it fits inside of the environment. So how do you avoid this mistake? You should review the most common playbooks or procedures to be mentally prepared for the alert when it triggers. Although you still will refer to them, you want to have that space in your head to be able to understand what the alert and context actually means and how it fits into the bigger picture. It's like working memory in a computer. You can compare the human brain. If you have these procedures and playbooks understood and fleshed out into your head, you're not going to have to review them as intensely or as often when you get an alert or detection that triggers. So when an alert triggers, you can fully focus on the context or details of that alert. Another good thing to do is ask yourself why the alert actually triggered, like understanding the indicators of compromise, such as an IP address, a host name, a file name, a hash, etc. Also, if it's available, it's very good to understand the detection of the logic itself. When an alert triggers and you just have the alert, its name and its description, you may not fully understand what conditions are being set in the alert and why it's triggering. But if you have that logic, you're going to better understand what that alert actually does specifically. It's like looking under the hood of a car and seeing the engine, all its intricate parts, and how it actually functions. Another option to prevent over-reliance on tools is looking at historical or past and previous records or tickets completed and closed. You should specifically identify the tickets that have similar context, IOCs, details, and etc. The second mistake SOC analysts commonly make is lacking documentation. For a first-year SOC analyst or someone who's just starting in a role in cybersecurity, not documenting or revising previous documents after investigations and triage is common. This can lead to repeated mistakes and lapses in knowledge. So how do you avoid this mistake? Make it a habit and not a chore. What I mean by that is don't just start documenting or taking notes after you've completed the investigation. Do it as you're doing the investigation. It'll be easier to create the whole story and narrative of the alert and its specific nuances instead of waiting after an investigation is done to take notes. You're not going to remember everything. So take notes while you investigate. Also, create and maintain these notes in an organized format. You should ideally use a centralized system or repository to log your findings, even for alerts that turn out to be benign or non-malicious alerts that were detected but aren't actually malicious, a false positive. These notes help with trending and pattern analysis later. Last, use templates for your documentation or notes. Standardized templates reduce friction and make documentation more seamless and consistent. Third mistake SOC analysts commonly make is having a weak understanding of the environment. One thing that will make your job easier rather than harder is understanding the infrastructure and environment of the network or system you are actually protecting. Understanding the environment also means understanding the normal or BAU behavior that goes on within that network or environment. How do you avoid making this mistake? One thing you can do and should do is study network and system diagrams. Spend time reviewing architecture diagrams, data flow maps, and network segments to understand what normal should actually look like. The fourth mistake is inadequate communication with your team, and not just with your team, but with other teams. The Security Operations Center is comprised of multiple subject matter experts and potentially teams that serve different functions. If you can't communicate with other teams, you're missing out on understanding the bigger picture of what's happening. For example, take IT. If you can communicate with the IT team and understand what normal looks like in the context of what they're doing on their day-to-day, that might help you tune alerts that deal with those users or behavior. For example, an IT person might commonly remote desktop protocol onto a user's device. So if you see that happening repeatedly with users or identities that are associated with IT, that should give you a clue that this activity leans more on the benign side. Another example is threat intelligence. It's really good to have communication with threat intel because say if an attack campaign is reported and it's targeted towards the industry that you work in, if threat intel does not relay that information back to you in time, you asking them about it can save you a lot of grief on understanding if an attacker or threat actor does get inside of your systems, what they are actually doing and what their objectives are. Poor communication generally just wastes time, delays responses, and misaligns efforts between teams. But how do you avoid this mistake? You should understand or establish a chain of communication. Know exactly who to contact or reach out to for escalation, clarification, or approvals. You could even have contract trees documented and available in your notes when you need them. Also, you should check if the procedure or playbook includes who to contact. Another point on avoiding this mistake is to speak the teams that you're communicating with's language. Don't just send data like logs or detection details. Translate the findings into impact or operational terms when talking to non-SOC teams. Mistake number 5, last but not least, is failing to escalate properly. Holding on to complex incidents for too long does more harm than good. Instead, if you think there's enough information to declare this suspicious or potentially malicious, you should escalate this to senior analysts or other departments. Failing to escalate increases risk, and that's what us as cybersecurity professionals are trying to manage: risk. The longer you hold on to an incident that's potentially malicious, the more the likelihood of a vulnerability being exploited. So how do you avoid this mistake? Know your limits. Be honest about the complexity of the alert or investigation. If it is over your head and there's some information you need to learn, record that information, that knowledge, that topic, that concept. Learn it, but escalate the alert earlier rather than later. Also, ask your teammates at your level. Ask them if you should actually escalate it, or if you are working on an alert that you think you have enough information but you don't know if you want to escalate it just yet, you could ask your team, especially the more senior folk on your level, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc. So we just covered the most common mistakes SOC analysts make and why they matter. The final advice I have is to stay sharp, build strong work habits, and keep these mistakes in your mind as you grow in your role. Small improvements can make a big difference. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts or any questions. I'd be happy to answer. Thank you again for watching this video. Stay safe, stay secure, and peace.